What's going on, everyone? It's Bales and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be going through what I believe are the must-have value players in AFL Fantasy for 2024. So I'll be going through some value premiums that are priced quite cheaply to what I think they can do, but also talking about some value mid-prices and guys that are a little bit more expensive than booking price. We're going to be going through a few names today. But before we do, as always, if you are enjoying the content around here, please smash a like on the video. You guys smashed the last video. We had over in excess of 150 likes. So thank you guys for the support on the team reveal video. If you haven't checked it out, make sure you go and do that as well. And also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're nudging so close to 1,500 subscribers. I believe we're 10 away at time of recording. So if you can subscribe and get around all the content here, make sure you do still content before the season starts as well. Also, don't forget, I'm also doing a live Q&A with Vams and DT Binny next week, along with potentially DT Lemon as well. Just waiting to hear back that he'll be free, but it'll be good next Monday at this stage. We'll be answering all your questions ahead of round one. And last thing to plug before we get into the players is on TikTok. If you can go follow me there at BalesDT. The goal is to hit 1,000 followers so I can stream live on there with the live watch songs that I also do on YouTube. So make sure you go and follow me at BalesDT on TikTok. But without further ado, let's get stuck into what I believe are the must-have value players in AFL Fantasy for 2024. So let's get the screen up here. Let's get the stats center open and go through some of these players. So I've got three defenders that I want to talk about, and we'll touch on a couple other names after. So first defender I'm going to be talking about is Hayden Young. So we saw in the practice games and the community series games that he's playing midfield. We knew this from the beginning of preseason. Fremantle said that he was training as a full-time midfielder. He was going to be a full-time midfielder, and that's what we saw. Third quarter against, I think, West Coast, he went back into defence. Erasmus did come on the second half. I think Fife got rested. I think that just had more to do with getting a few guys through there and just get some minutes into some of the younger players. I didn't see it as an issue. Against Port Adelaide, looked fantastic. 114 points was essentially the main midfielder in there. I think he had the most CBAs for Fremantle on the day. Clearly the top score with 114 points. Next best for Freo was actually Caleb Sarong at 85. So Young, and we've seen in years past where these defenders that have played into the midfield that already had the mark game behind them have then added the tackle game with them. They've been able to go and be really high scoring defenders. So think of guys like Jordan Dawson, Callum Mills, Rory Laird, guys like that in the past that have been able to go really big numbers in the midfield, but be available as defenders for us because they played defence, obviously, the year prior, and that's why they got defensive status. So, again, I'm not saying Hayden Young's going to be a Rory Laird or a Callum Mills or a Jordan Dawson type year where he goes over 110, but the scope for him being priced at 89 to improve on that by a decent enough margin to be pretty good value, I think is worthwhile investing in. I think he could go at 100. I think he's a 95 plus player. There obviously is a chance he goes 105, 110 and does one of those like a year like Dawson that had. I don't think he does. Again, I think he's closer to that 100 mark than above that. But I just think he's really good value. And for me, he would be my number one defender that I'd be saying is the best value and the must-have sort of those premium defenders. Going to the second option is actually going to be Elliot Yeo. Very, very weird times that we're talking about Elliot Yeo as a must-have player in AFL Fantasy, a must-have value player. Obviously, we know there's been the injury history and the fitness issues over the past number of years. Now for Yoey, the good signs have been there all pre-season. So he went away overseas. I think they worked on his running style, I believe they said, which apparently has made a big difference. He came back to pre-season a couple of months early, hasn't missed a beat since, which is fantastic. That's exactly what we want to hear from Yeo. And then we wanted to see him in actual game action. We saw 8 quarters of football where he looked good. We could see some of that burst that we've seen in past from Yeo. And I just think priced at 70, for me, the only issue with Yeo is the injuries, right? If he's not injured and you say he played 23 games this season, unlikely to happen for Yeo, but if he did, I think he goes 90 plus quite easily. I think that we've seen him playing full-time midfield. He's gone over 100 before in this role. I'm not saying he's going to average 100, but I think a 90 plus average is on the cards. Even if it's 85, still 15 points of upside. It's still a decent amount, and it's not going to be a bad pick. But I think if he goes 90 plus, that's going to be a guy that you're going to need in your side. So, and I think he goes 90 plus. So for me, I think he'd be a must-have defender, which, as I said, is very, very interesting to say that he is a must-have player. And he's owned by nearly 25% of the comps. That just shows you there's a few people that have got quite a bit of confidence in him. Actually, what was Hayden Young's ownerships? He was sitting at, nearly 40% as well. So that's another reason Hayden Young is also one of those must-have players, because if he goes big and you're not in that 40% of coaches that owns him, you're going to be falling behind pretty quickly. So for me, Hayden Young and Yo are the top two there. For me, number 3 is actually a guy that's going to be playing an opening round, and a guy I'm going to be keeping a good eye on, which is Zach Williams. 442k is insanely cheap. I think he's priced below 50. He's had years where he's gone over 90. We've seen him average over 80 multiple times as well. Again, if he went 80, it's 30 points of upside. That's a massive win. I don't see him going over 80. I think I see him more closer to the 75 mark, which is still going to be about that 25 odd points of upside. So, this with Zach Williams, it's got a lot to do with opening round. He's got to put up a good score in opening round, and he's got to look good at the same time. So, he's got to look good. He doesn't necessarily have to put up a 90. I probably should have phrased it like that. He doesn't have to put up a 90 or 100 in opening round. If he looks good, got a good role, doesn't look like he's got any sort of fitness issues or anything like that, and he looks great, I think a 70 plus would probably do it for me, because Brisbane at the Gab is a tough matchup in opening round. He's then got Richmond at the MCG, obviously in the opening game of the season. Then then he's got his bye, which obviously you can cover him, being priced at 49. If you get a rookie that pops a 40 or 50 that week, one, hopefully they don't count for you, but two, you're not actually losing anything in terms of points on field, right? He's then got North Melbourne in round 3. And I think Richmond and North Melbourne are decent matchups for him, and I think he could go quite well. So, again, 26% as well. Ownership, it's decent. I think with the news that he is playing opening round, people watch him. If he puts up if it is a 90 plus, I think you're going to have to start him. And he gets that double cash rise post round 1. If he's 40% owned and he's putting up good scores, you're going to be, again, behind. So for me, I think he would be a must-have if he looks decent enough in opening round. And even if he puts up a 70, I think he's a really good pick at 442k, because he's clearly the best option under 500k, really under 600k probably, that we've got. So yeah, for me, Zach Williams is a good option. So they're my top 3 defenders that I'd say must-haves. Just a couple of names I'll just touch on quickly. Harry Sheasel, he's good value, I think, just because being priced at 97, he's owned by over 36%. If he was to go, he's priced at 97, so he's not value per se, but if he was to go at 105, 110 and do a Nick Dacos, because of how highly owned he is, that would take the season away from you. So that's why I just sort of mention him, because I think that if he was to go 105, 110, obviously it's value. He's not a must-have. I think he's a very good option, but if he was to go really well, that would be where it would start sort of really hurting you. So, and he's got that role that we wanted, which was great to see in the preseason. So for me, I'd say She's be one of those. Tom Stewart is good. He's probably fairly priced, to be fair. So I probably wouldn't say he's even that much value. He's probably going to go at 95 to 100 and do what he always does. Lockie Whitfield and Jaden Short, I'd be probably talking about them maybe a little bit more, because I think both can go close to that 100 mark. Maybe more, depending on how they go. They just got opening round buys, so I probably can't say they're must-have just because those buys. Williams is different because he's so cheap. Salem, I really like, and potentially post Thursday night, if he's got a fair amount of midfield time with Oliver in the side, I'd be bumping Salem up and almost potentially putting him in behind those top 3 players, because priced at 78, if he's to go at 90, 95, which I think he'll do if he's playing in a midfield role, and he's the perfect option to run to his round 6 buy. Either one, he's doing okay, he's going at 85 to 90, which isn't a bad pick. You're still getting value, and you can flick him to a Nick Dacos in round 6. Best case scenario is he's going 95 plus, and he's going to be a top 6 defender playing midfield, and you're not going to trade him. So for me, and again, he could do worse than that, but I'm just saying if he was doing well and you aren't forced to trade him out early, they're probably the 2 scenarios you're looking at. Either you trade him out because he's done okay, or you keep him because he's going really well. So I like Salem. Jordan Clark as well, really like. Good. I think he's decent value because he looks like that main distributor coming out of the back line. I think Ryan's still the number 1 guy back there, but I think Jordan Clark is going to be the guy they're going to use through transition a lot. So I like Jordan Clark there, priced at 77. Himmelberg would be one I'll probably speak about, but that early buy, it crosses him off in terms of considering him early. He's got 2 great matchups, but I'd prefer to wait and see how he goes and how the scoring so it gets spread out across those GOS defenders. I think Whitfield's still clearly the number one guy, but how's Lockie Ash going to go? We know Connor Iden and even Sam Tony, guys like that, do get involved in the +6 game as well. So Himmelberg's ceiling isn't going to be what it was a couple of years ago when Leon Cameron was still there. Liam Baker as well, I'm watching on, was it Saturday when they played Gold Coast? He plays midfield, he plays decent midfield minutes. He could be an option as defender forward. Kitty Coleman, I'm watching on Friday night. Looked great in the pre-season. If Williams was to fail and Kitty Coleman looked really good, could you find that 180k to put Kitty Coleman there at maybe D5 and pay up in defence? Because I think if Williams fails, you're probably going to have to pay up in defence. There's not really many options under 550, maybe besides a Buderick is probably the only one that comes to mind that I'd want. He's obviously there as well. He's another watch for me. And Nick Caulfield as well is the other one. That 358k I think is a really, really good option. I think he's going to be the most popular D6 in fantasy this year. I just had those other three ahead of him. So, yeah, I think that Yo, Williams, and Young are the top three. But again, if Williams was to fail, then Caulfield would be the guy. I only put Williams more because I think he's more vital in terms of team structure than what a Nick Caulfield would be. Because I think Nick Caulfield's probably just in a lot of people's sides, but probably doesn't have the same upside as what a Zach Williams does. Moving on to the midfielders. So there's a few names here, and they're all bunched pretty close together. So at number one, and I don't know if I'd rank this in terms of order of preference. I'll just go in terms of price because I did that obviously with defenders. So at one, being a more expensive player, I'm going to go Jack Steele. Priced at 98. We've seen what he's done in the past. He's gone over 120. I don't think he's going 120. Just let's put that straight away. I think he can go 110. And this is that perfect pick. We saw Bont last year as the example I'll use here, where he was priced under 100 and he ended up being number one scorer in the game at 117. Not expecting Jack Steele to do that, even though it is in the possibilities of him doing it because we've seen it in the past. But, and because Sinclair have changed the game style, so I don't see it happening. But we look for, this is the sweet spot for mids we look for. We look for them priced at the 95 to 100 mark that can go the 110s and score in line, but you're saving cash from the top price players. And I think Jack Steele is that player this year that I'll be putting right at the top of the list there in terms of players priced around that 95, 100 mark. And he's currently sitting in my team, obviously, as you would have seen yesterday in the team, or a couple of days ago in the team reveal. At number two, Nick Martin for me. I've got actually, I probably should have got Jack Steele up here. If anyone wants to see his ownership and stuff like that, yeah, nearly 17%. So it's actually risen a bit. I looked and I think it was about 13, 14% when I last looked. So it's gone up a little bit. Didn't set the preseason alight, so I don't think he's just going to jump up to 30% owned. So that could be a good thing for people that have got Jack Steele on their side. So yeah, I think Steele is a good option. But moving to Nick Martin, who I was starting to speak about here, his ownership's getting up there, over 21% now. I remember when it was 10, 11, 12%. It got to 15%, I think, the night that he went 120 against Geelong. And then it went, I think it was over 20% the next day. So people are keen on Nick Martin. I can definitely see why. If someone said, who would you be picking, Steele or Martin? I'd probably go Nick Martin as my number one guy there. Priced at 85, it's not the fact that we think if he goes 95, it's 10 points of upside. If Jack Steele goes 110, if you can find the extra 100k, you get him. It's the fact that Nick Martin has been playing halfback all preseason, looked fantastic in both practice games as well, preseason games he's played. Figures at 95 plus, he's going to be near a top 6 defender. And in rounds, I think it's at post round 6. Normally DPP is a post round 5, but I think this year because opening round's pushed back a week, I'm not 100% sure if it's post round 6 or if it's post round 5. I don't know. I think it's post round 6. Anyway, Nick Martin would get defender status and he'd be essentially a top 6 defender. And I know that Selby has mentioned it a couple of times as well. And JD and I think Tommy, who does the Supercoach pods with Selby at Mirror's Magic, have both said that they reckon he can go at 105 and be the number 2 defender behind Nick Dacos. And I could definitely see that happening the way he's looking pre-season. He's got that Nick Dacos type role where he's just not defending much. He's just the guy they use out of the back line all the time and getting plenty of the ball as well. So I think if he's going at 100 plus, he's a must-have in my eyes. And I think he's a must-have anyway, just because his ownership's going to start really getting up there. I think it's as more people start to finalise their teams, obviously with fantasy sort of actual fantasy games for us being locked in from next Thursday. I think Nick Martin's going to be one that's going to be in a lot of people's teams. At number 3, it's probably a combination of I reckon it'd be a combination of 3 players for me. You can put Ollie Wines, Carl Amon, and Matt Crouch in the same bucket. I'm not sure who the third option would be, but I'm going to talk about all 3 of them because I think that they're all, you could argue a case that all are must-have. So I'll start with Ollie Wines. We obviously know that he didn't have much of a pre-season last year. Obviously, Brownlow managed from a few years ago, going at 112, and he's been injured for the last couple of years. Yeah, I think it was 3 years ago that he won the Brownlow. Last 2 seasons haven't been great for Ollie. Averaged 78 last year from 23 games. Obviously, didn't have a pre-season, injured. I think he went off early with an injury last year. It was a heart thing or something. He went off early. So, priced at 78. If he goes 95 again, it's that pick that you want, the guy that's going to score decent enough and make good cash at the same time that can then get you up to, if it is a Toot Miller who's on the screen here, if it is a Toot Miller post his round 3 buy, get you close enough that you can make that switch very, very easily post round 3. But he's also a guy that you can have sitting as your M4, like 4, 5, 6, depending on how sort of skinny you go in the midfield. Currently, he's sitting as an M6. Yeah, M6 for me. If he's your M6, gets you through to the mid-season buys, you can move him on then. But he's just a good player to have there. Good start to the season as well, and that's what you look for in these players. It's an even better bonus. The fact he's got West Coast, Richmond, Melbourne, and Essendon to start the season. I think it's a great first 4, especially West Coast, Richmond. If he puts up back-to-back hundreds, bang, you've already got your cash gen started. And as long as he can sort of tick over those 95 plus scores, or 90 plus scores at least, he's going to keep making that cash and be a good sideways trade later on in the season. So yeah, I like him. And what was his ownership as well? It's actually currently under 10%, I believe. Yeah, 9.62%, which is crazy. I think he's really good value. I thought it'd be a bit higher than that, but yeah, I think he's good value. I'll talk about Carl Amon. Actually, I'll talk about Matt Crouch next. Matt Crouch, obviously, is great value. We saw back end of last year in the final 6 games, I think it was, he went at 98, priced at, so obviously average 89. He's priced at around that, is it 80? It's around that 80 odd mark, I believe. I don't have the exact number in front of me, obviously, but priced it in the 80s. If he goes close to that 100 mark, which we know he can do, good value. He's presenting potentially 10, 15 points of upside. And like I said, Wines, he's putting good enough scores up that you can then move him on to another player later on and it not be much of a cash difference. So Matt Crouch, and we've seen him go over 100 multiple times. That's definitely in the realms of possibility, but he didn't have Dawson in there as well. Laird was in there for times, but even Matt Crouch was putting up good numbers before both were in. So he's putting up great numbers before Laird moved in, putting up okay numbers when Laird came in, and then obviously they fell off when Dawson came in, obviously dropped from the team, came back in and played well. So I'll probably have him a bit more closer to 95 than what I do 100. I'd almost say it's almost more likely he goes 90 to 95 than him going 100 plus. So I think he's going to be around that 95 to 98 mark for me. And he's decent value, still 11% owned, just over 11%, so not too bad as well. So I like Crouch. And then Carl Amon as well is the other one I quite like. So priced 87. We saw the back part of last year, average 114.2 in his last 5, 120.7 in his last 3. Playing off half back, we saw it in the preseason game, had 28 touches and 4 marks. Only scored the 94, but that's a good thing, because it means that people that have got him, he's under 4% owned. I don't see him all of a sudden becoming 15, 20% owned. I think it will stay below 10%. I think at most it might be maybe 4, 5, 6, 7%, or whatever. He's another guy that could get defender status in round 6. So, and I think, again, having that ability in round 6 or 7, whenever DPPs come out, is to flick Amon and Nick Martin into your defence and trade guys like Salem, Jordan Clark, Elliot Yeo, Zach Williams, Caulfield, if he's made enough money. Train those guys to midfielders in that part is quite good as well. And I've never been a big advocate for getting a player in the hopes they get DPPs, but I think we've seen enough from more so Martin, but also Amon as well, that they're going to be playing half back and they can score in line with what Crouch and Wines are going to do, that they could potentially be better, and Amon could be a better option potentially than Crouch and Wines. So I do like Amon as an option, obviously very quite unique, but also his fixture's quite good as well. I like the fact he's got 3 games to start the MCG, which obviously we know, big ground, plenty of space for some plus 6s, which we know that he likes. And yeah, I think could get off to a good start. And even Collingwood, Gold Coast and North Melbourne's not too bad as well. And then even he's got like Sydney's at MCG, which is decent. He's got Bulldogs and St Kilda. So I quite like that run actually. So for me, I think Amon's a great option as well. And all 3 of those guys are good options. In terms of some other players here that I've got, that I want to speak about, Zach Butters, I would have had potentially in the same conversation as Jack Steele, that guy that can go 105 plus and potentially go 110. That ankle injury scares me a little bit, and just sort of seeing Port's game style still, Wines it sort of seems like he is going to be the number 1 CBA guy in there, because he can't play anywhere else, really. Butters and Rosie can play forward. I think they're still going to be in there at least 65% of the time, Rosie and Butters. Maybe, actually, Rosie could be less. I think Butters, this guy, will be in there 65%. I just worry, is there enough upside in a low-scoring Port Adelaide side? Can he go towards that 110? If he goes 105, it's not a failed pick, but it's not really doing you much. It's almost, it's not a nothing pick, but it's just sort of in that sort of middle range. Whereas I think Jack Steele is more likely to go 110 because I think he's still the main guy in there, regardless if Brad Crouch's in there or not. If Brad Crouch might miss start of the season, that's even better for a guy like Jack Steele. So, Butters I don't mind. LDU I was keen on, but that preseason game, I don't normally look into my premiums preseason games, but that 38 for me really scared me off. Just the fact that Wines, Martin Crouch, and Amon and Jack Steele and all these guys, I don't see them dropping 60, under 60 in many games. I don't think they'll drop under 60 in any games, to be honest. But we know LDU can drop a stinker, and that's been the knock on him. Obviously, besides the injury, history he's got. He's been very streaky. He's had games where he goes at 115 plus, but then he's had a stretch for a month where he'll go at 80 or whatever. And guy price 97. If you're getting him just at 90, if he's just a 90-95 guy, it's not really what you want. And North Melbourne playing this faster game style from there, and their defenders getting a lot more of the ball. So Sheasel, Fisher, McKercher, guys like that getting more of the ball. Even Stevenson, Scott on the wing. I just don't know if LDU's got that upside of that 110 to really be that great pick. And if he goes at 105, it's not really going to hurt you either. Like, it's a good pick for those people that still stay. I mean, 105 is not bad. You're still getting 8 points of upside. I just think that I like Steele more. I probably like Butters more, to be fair, as well. Even Took, who's on a buy at 96, and I'll speak about Took as well, who I like, but he's just got that early buy, which is hard for Took. So that's the only reason I wouldn't start him. But I think if people are talking about starting Walsh, and I probably would have rather started Took Miller, even if Walsh is fully fit, just because I think that he's got the scope to be the number one mid at North Melbourne. Sorry, not North Melbourne, Gold Coast. So, yeah, for me, I like Took, but that early buy kills him. So, and yeah, LDU, I'm just not quite sure on. John Newcomb, I'm a big fan of. It's just, he's in the mix for me, definitely. Can I see him going 105, 110 and being that guy that really elevates his game? On the practice game, yeah, I can. But do I almost want to watch him do it first and then jump on a bit like what Tom Green and Caleb Strong, guys like that? Tom Green I jumped on last year. Do I want to do that and wait and watch him? That's the interesting thing. Obviously, went 116 his last three, had a massive game. I think against the Dogs, like a 159 or something as well. So, yeah, Newcomb can go well, and he's definitely a guy I'll consider. George Shield, if it wasn't for that buy, could potentially be someone I also look at, but with an early buy. At 74 years value, though, and I'll talk about a few of these others in the forward line. Sheldrick, good watch in opening round to see how he goes, but I think that other guys like a Goulden, that will get more of a bump. But Sheldrick's got the game, got the fantasy game about him, so we might see him go all right. And Riley Bonner will be the final one I'll probably talk about here as well. I'll actually, Henry Huswaite as well, decent option, just in a very awkward price range. And Riley Bonner's in an awkward price range as well, but I'd prefer Bonner because we've seen both games he's gone over 100. St Kilda do play this chip mark style, and if Jack Sinclair misses the first couple of weeks, he could have put up a couple of hundreds like he has in the preseason, and all of a sudden that cash gen is going to be coming in very, very fast. So for me, Bonner is a good option. I'm probably not going to go there, though, just because if he fails, where are you going to go? Like, I know Sheldrick and Huswaite are a couple of names like here that you could go to, but if Bonner fails, and even if Huswaite just doesn't like do what you need, and Sheldrick and gets limited game time, whatever, where are you going from there? Whereas if you're starting a Crouch, Wines, Amon, Martin, if you're not starting one of them, or if you don't start Newcomb, you can pivot quite easily. You just need to find not even 100k and it's fine. So for me, I'd rather those guys and not take that risk on Bonner. It'd be better to watch him for a week or two, go down to him, pay that a little bit more of a premium at that 550 and bring him in, then start him and it go wrong. So for me, I'd rather probably not start him, but if people are starting him, I couldn't talk you out of starting, so I'd think he's not a bad option. Moving to the rucks. So we're going to talk about three names here. Obviously, we'll talk about one of the guys on the screen there in the forward line. For me, Max Gawn would be number one here. I think Max Gawn is the ruck out of these three that you have to lock in. I think price at 92, went 130, obviously had a huge game against Carlton. But we've seen him in the past when he's getting 70% plus CBAs, he's going at that 110 plus range. And we've seen, I think, he averaged 124 last time he had, he had this full-time ruck role. It's been a long time since that. He obviously had Luke Jackson for a couple of years. Then he left and they brought Brody Grundy in. So it's been a fair while since we've seen it. I think, first game that Grundy went back down into the twos, Gorn put like a 160 or something up. So he's got that big ceiling. I think he goes 110 plus and really pushes those top two in Tim English and Ryan Marshall. So for me, I think Max Gorn's the guy I'll be picking there as well. And having an ownership nearly 40%, if he's going 110 plus, that's going to take the season away from you very, very quickly. And people are going to also have, if he's going at 110, he's a captain option as well, which is also pretty significant in my eyes. So for me, I think Max Gorn out of the three is that must-have gone. I dare say, if he puts up a good score against Brody Grundy on Thursday night, he's going to be brought in by a lot more sides and could potentially near that 45-50% range. But yeah, I really like Max Gorn this year, and I think you've got to pick him. I'll talk about Brody Grundy next. So 677k is value. It's straight up his value. Price at 75, he's going to be going better than that. We know that. It's just how much better is he going to go? If he goes 90-95, which based on what I saw against Oscar McInerney, he didn't look great. But I put that a little bit more down to the fact that there was all these guys, all the tall players playing for Sydney. You had Peter Laddams, you had Hayden McLean, Joel Amardi. I think maybe Logan McDonald might have come on late in that game as well. They're not going to play all those guys. I think that they're going to be playing a Grundy as their main ruck, 80+%. I think McLean will play in the forward line and be the backup ruck, and then Logan McDonald will be their key forward. I can't see them playing more than that, just because they've got a lot of those small forwards. You've got Patley, you've got Heaney, you've got Hayward, you've got Wicks they like playing as well. You've got all these guys in the forward line that you can't really afford to be playing that many tools. So for me, I think it'd be McLean chopping it for Grundy. And yeah, I think he scored 51 on the weekend. Did he get rested in the last quarter, I think, as well? So yeah, I think worst case he goes, worst case, then he goes 85, which is still upside. I think he's got the scope to go 100 plus. We know that. And if he can tackle like he did in the first practice game, he got 101 points. If he can start doing that and go to 100, you'd almost potentially lean to him over Cherry. But the good thing with Luke Jackson, who we'll talk about in the forward line, is it opens up the possibility of starting Gorn and Grundy and not being worried about the buys, because Jackson can come into your ruck line in round 5 when Grundy's got a buy, and then round 6 and keep him in there round 6 when Gorn's got the buy. So that, for me, eliminates the risk of starting Gorn and Grundy, and it becomes a real possibility now. So for me, I like the fact that that's happened. Grundy puts up a decent enough score against Gorn on Thursday night. I'd probably be leaning to him over the next guy we're going to talk about. But yeah, at nearly 40%, his ownership's coming down, but I dare say if he has a good game on Thursday night, that's going to start going back up again. So yeah, for me, I like Grundy. Tristan Cherry is the third guy we're going to talk about. It's essentially most teams going to be picking two of the three players here, and they're all great value. That's why they're all in this the must-have value players video, because I think you have to have two. There is a play where you go Marshall and a Gorn, or an English and a Gorn. I just think that there's that much cash saved. There's like, was it 400k from, essentially 400k from Grundy, 500k from Cherry. I think it's way too much value that you've got to probably start one of these two. Cherry, obviously his ownership started to come up with Grundy's sort of poor performance in the last game. I just think with Cherry, 66 is priced at, or actually no, he's priced a little bit more. Is it a little bit more than that? I don't know. He's priced under 70. I think he goes 80 plus. It just, again, depends a bit like Grundy. How much more than 80 plus can he go? I think he's probably capped at 95. And again, 95 is a great average, right? But I think Grundy's got the higher upside. But I think Cherry's probably got I think it's more likely that it's really hard to put it into words, and it's hard with these things. It's such a tough decision. Cherry being that 100k cheaper and not having an early buy, which means you get an extra player with Jackson staying in the forward line, I think could potentially be a positive for Cherry. I've currently got Cherry in my side over Grundy, but because of Jackson, I've got the spare cash in the bank where I can bring in Brody Grundy if he has a good game. And I think if he has a good game, I'm probably going to go Grundy just because I can and I'm not afraid about the buys. But Cherry for me is still a very good option. I don't think you can really go wrong really with either Grundy or Cherry, unless Grundy goes 105 plus. Then even though if Cherry goes 90 plus, you're still losing out a little bit to Grundy. But I think you've got to have two of the three. I like Gorn. He's got to be locked in. I think the real decision between Grundy and Cherry. And if you want to maybe listen to me and Warney talk about that in the head-to-head series and the first episode of that series, make sure you check that out and check out all the other episodes if you would like to as well. Moving into the forward line, Luke Jackson would speak about, obviously, because we're just talking about the rucks as well. Obviously, news came out. Well, I'm recording this Tuesday night. Obviously, yesterday, the news came out when you guys were watching this that Sean Darcy has had knee surgery. I think arthroscopic surgery to clear out some, I think they labelled it as loose bodies or something. I think Mitch, obviously from Boys, put on Twitter, I think he did research and said that normal procedure like this, but just sort of a clear out, it's 4 to 6 weeks recovery. So if that's the case, he's still going to be out probably like 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how long he takes back. Injury history as well, he might be longer. If Freo are struggling, maybe they don't rush Darcy back and they want to protect that investment that they made in him with the contract. So Luke Jackson, we saw him got 99 when Darcy didn't play last year, which that's 15 points of upside. So 14 points of upside essentially straight up. That's great. He could be the number one scoring forward for the first 6 weeks. And I'd probably put money on the fact that he probably would be that as well. I think it's a great option. And yeah, I think Jackson, having the flexibility as a ruck forward, if something happened to Grundy or Gorney in the season, you can put Jackson in your rucks and you can go get a forward or potentially a defender or mid, depending on what flexibility you've got. And he covers you in round 5 and 6 as well. I just think that there's so many boxes that Jackson's ticking that you have to pick him. Even if Darcy comes back in round 6, let's say, he's not going to play 80% ruck time, Darcy. It's still going to be probably almost a 50-50 split. And Jackson with a 50-50 split could still be a pretty solid forward for you. And because he's made that, he would have made a little bit of cash as well. I think Jackson, for me, has got to be a guy that you're putting in as your F1. So for me, he would be one of the must-have value players now, the fact that this Darcy news has come out for me. The next guy I'm going to speak about is Zach Fisher. He's had a fantastic run both preseason games. He scored 48.5 against Collingwood. Obviously, all those guys racked up back there. But then he scored a 115 or 119 or something. He had a big score. It was over 110 in the practice game against St Kilda. Obviously, St Kilda do give up points, but he's got the role. He had a lot of kick-ins. I think he's pretty much split it with Sheasel. He had 5 or 6 kick-ins, and Sheasel about the same. As a forward, priced at 69, if he's a top 6 forward, which I think he could definitely be with the lack of forward options we got, he's a smash pick. He could go at 95 plus in this role. We've seen North Melbourne defenders do this in the past. North Melbourne don't look like they're changing their game style. So for me, Zach Fish, I've got to have him in my side. I can't see a world where I don't start him unless something happened between now and then and something happened to Fisher. But if that doesn't happen and he's there, I'm picking him. I know that the hamstring niggles in pre-season. He's played 2 games of footy, played 6 quarters. He's looked good. So for me, I think I've got to pick him for me. Next guy I'll talk about as well. Well, there's 2 guys that are also locks. So I normally was going 3 in defence and forwards, but I think these 2 are locks as well. James Jordan looked great as well. I didn't actually check what was Jack. So Jack's ownership was still quite low, wasn't it? It was still under 10%. Yeah, 6.6%. But I dare say that'll be over 10% probably by tomorrow when it's all updated. And will probably continue to rise. And then Zach Fisher's nearly 24%. So that's a fair chunk as well. And then James Jordan, obviously, we'll speak about next. So obviously, huge game in the practice game. 119 points. Move more inside. Obviously, Adams being out is another positive for him. Obviously, it's not great to see players get injured, but I'm talking through this from a fantasy standpoint. Great for Jordan and his scoring. Obviously, Luke Parker's out as well for the first month. So 34% of the comp are already on Jordan. I dare say if he puts up another big score against Melbourne on Thursday night, he's going to be in a lot more teams than what he currently is already in. And yeah, for me, 454k as a midfielder, I think you've got to pick him. I think he's got to be in your side. And yeah, if I was ranking all the players I've talked about today, he'd be in the top 5 for me. I just think you've got to pick him. I think it's the only way you don't pick him is if he puts up a bad score in opening round. That would be the only way I wouldn't pick him. But I think that he'll score solid enough that you wouldn't worry about it anyway. But I think he'll have a good game and will be a good option. And Alex Sexton, another one of those guys. I think you've just got to pick him. He's just got to be locked in. Priced under 400k. Priced, I think it's 42. If he goes at 70, that's 28 points of upside. That's been conservative. I think he can go quite comfortably 80 plus, and he could push 90 realistically if in this role. If based on what I saw, one for now, again, I'm not expecting him to go 90 plus. I expect to see at least 75 plus. But if he goes at that 90 plus, he's going to be essentially a top 6 forward based on the lack of options we've got, or at least close enough anyway. He's just a great pick. So for me, I think Sexton's got to be there. And he's just more than a rookie. So if you've got Lazaro, Reed, and let's say Windsor on field, it's your 3 rookies, and you've got Jordan and a couple of other players, I think I'd just be paying an extra 100k or the extra 180k on your bench, put Sexton on your field bench or Windsor or something. I just think Sexton's got to be in your side. I think he's got a great role half back. It's real. It's the role he's going to be playing. So for me, Sexton has got to be in your side. And nearly 30% are on him. I remember when he was under 15%. Well, at the start of the preseason, he wouldn't have been owned by anyone. But now 30% of the comp already jumped on. And I think you've got to jump on as well. A few other options that I'll talk about quickly here before we finish off the video. So Harms is decent value. I just don't know he gets enough midfield time to really be that into that must-have category. I think he's a decent option. Priced it around that, was it around, no, he's priced a bit more expensive because he's priced based on his average the year before. If he played one more game, he would have been priced on what he would last year, and a lot of people would be picking him. But yeah, Harms for me is not a must-have. He's a decent pick. I don't think he'll be an amazing pick, but I don't think he'd be a bad pick either. I think he'd be okay. Liam Baker, obviously talk about a bit in defence as well. Jack Billings could be a great pick depending on how he goes in opening round against Sydney. Priced very cheap, quite cheaply at 538k. If we see an 80 plus, I think he's a good pick, but he's not quite that must-have just because there are a few of these forward options. I'd rather Jackson, I'd rather Fisher, I'd rather Jordan, I'd rather Sexton. And then once you've got those four in your team, you got Reid and one of Lazaro, Windsor or Wilson on your field, and how can you really fit in a Billings? It is tough. Do you put a Reid in your midfield? Do you bench Lazaro and have just Reid F6? And then Sexton F5 and then have Jordan F4 and then Billings F3 maybe. I don't know. So it's tough. He's in a tough spot, but if he has a good opening round, we can reassess. Then Tom Power had her on the first game, was going okay in the first half, but when Simpkin went out, Phillips seemed to get more of a run in the midfield. So for me, if Phillips is not named, Power could be a better option, but I'd rather Power and even Sardis, who I'll speak about next, the two guys that I'd rather watch. And even McKenzie to an extent. I'd rather watch those three. If they go well, bring them into my side after watching for a couple of weeks. Pay a little bit more of a premium, but know that they're better options and good options. So yeah, Power, Sardis and McKenzie are pretty much that same thing. Sardis obviously is not a bad option, but playing wing though. If he's playing inside mid, he'd be bumped near the top just because of the upside and obviously high scoring junior as well. I just don't think he'll get that much CBA action this year. He'll play more on a wing with, I think Durham will play more in the midfield. And Cam McKenzie only had the 4 CBAs on the weekend. You've got so many guys there. Newcomb, Nash and Huswaite probably look like they're starting 3 mids. Then you've also got Josh Ward. You've got Cam McKenzie. You've got... I don't know if Dylan Moore plays round 1, but if he does he get a couple of CBAs? Con McDonald, does he get any midfield time? I might be forgetting 1 or 2 players off the top of my head that could be starting in that. Warple, so I forgot about Warple. Bloody Warple, forgot about him. He's another one as well. So yeah, I just don't know if I see him getting as much midfield time. He's still going to be a good pick. I just don't know if he's got the upside as what the other guys have for me to have to pick him. And then Nat Fyfe with the last one we touch on as well. So again, we know he's a good pick. Dual Brownlow medalist, priced under 50. Actually no, not priced just over 50 potentially, but he gets so many handballs that even we saw against Port Adelaide, I know hard game, had 26 disposals and still only scored a 58. Gave away 4 free kicks granted as well, but he's not a big tackler, he's not a big marker. In the actual season, does he get more tackles, does he get more marks? I don't know. I just think there are the better options that probably rule Fyfe out for the time being, with Jackson now becoming an option that we probably have to start with. Fisher's going to be very popular. There's a lot of people's F1s before the Jackson news. Jordan's locked in, Sexton's locked in, all those rookies are locked in. Again, a bit like McKenzie, like I was saying with him, and Billings, where can you fit these guys? You can't have all of them unless you put some in your midfield. And if you're putting Fyfe in your midfield, you'd say that probably Bonner is a better pick in the midfield than him. So, yeah, for me, Fyfe, it's difficult. Again, if Billings was to fail with Jordan, if he puts up a bad score, maybe you consider Fyfe again. If something else happens to another player, maybe you consider Fyfe. But for me, I don't think he's a bad pick. I think he'll go better than what he's priced at, obviously. He's just not better than the other guys I mentioned before. So for me, you don't have to have Fyfe. Let's put it that way. So, and what's Fyfe ownership as well sitting at? Sitting at 28%. It's quite high actually. So be interesting. It might change a bit with the Jackson news. Maybe Fyfe's the guy that you go up to from there. So for me, they're the must-have value plays in AFL Fantasy for 2024. There's a lot of good names there. I've got a fair few of them on my side. Obviously, you would have seen it yesterday. Obviously, Jax has made his way into my side now, so I'll be doing a team reveal probably next Wednesday, going through my final team before. But yeah, no, because you guys have smashed the team reveal from a couple of days ago. I'm blown away by the support that's been shown, so appreciate it. But let me know in the comments below, guys, who you guys agree with that are must-haves, who you guys don't agree with that are must-haves. Maybe there's other players that I didn't mention in the episode today. Put them in the comments below if you think that they're must-haves as well. If you've got any other questions as well, also put them in the chat below. But appreciate all of you guys watching. Make sure you smash a like on the video. As I said, we had got the likes smashed on the last video. So if we can get 100 likes again on this video, that would be absolutely fantastic. Subscribe to the channel as we near 1,500 on our way to 2,000. Follow on the socials at BallsET on all the socials, including the TikTok where I said to get the 1,000 followers. And yeah, I'll be back on Friday for a must-have rookies episode. So really looking forward to that. I'm also going to get a little bit of information when I record that, because I'll record that post that Thursday night game. A few of those interesting players there, so we'll be able to see if we'll start with them or not. But so make sure you guys tune into that. And until then, enjoy the first game of opening round. And I'll catch you guys on Friday afternoon. So I'm out. I'll catch you guys then. Cheers.